Assalamu alaikum, you're watching Perspective and I'm Faisal Rehman, live from our Islamabad studio. Today we'll be talking about the judicial reforms in Pakistan. How important are they? And interestingly, when you look at the lower judiciary and look at the performance of that and looking at the sort of cases which are pending and the other, I would say, issues which are related to those, the kind of sufferings people are going through on almost a daily basis. So that is a challenge and a half for the government to do that. When we talk about the Supreme Court of Pakistan, obviously different cases are there. It's not a probing court. It has a totally different dynamics regarding the structure. But when you talk about the very basic court level, when you talk about the session courts or you talk about the High Court, there are a lot of issues and very genuine concerns about the people of Pakistan. We'll be talking about that in detail in our today's program. We have with us on our right is Sher Afzal Khan Marwat Sahab, a practicing lawyer and a former judge, sir. Thank you very much. And we also have with us Yasir Hamdani Sahab, a known advocate, sir. Thank you very much. And we'll be soon joined in by Shoaib Shaheen Sahab, who's on his way and he's going to join us in a little while. But Marwat Sahab, starting off from you, sir. Judicial reforms, sir, we've been hearing about these reforms for quite some time now. But sir, nothing pragmatic or nothing has been done so far. First of all, let's identify the core issues why we have been unable to sort of achieve that benchmark and to carry out these judicial reforms so far. So this is 2017. We're a country where more than 21 crore people live. And we always use this word that, you know, one should stay away. In Urdu, we call it like court kacheri se bachaye. So why?
Well, since the birth of this country, the first judicial reforms that were introduced in Pakistan were in the year 2001, when under the auspices of Access to Justice program, grassroots level reforms were undertaken under the administrative control of Ministry of Law and Justice Commission. Huge funds were allocated, and it was for the first time that we saw infrastructural changes in the lower judiciary, which we commonly call district judiciary. Probably there was no concept of usage of the computer equipments, electronic gadgets. There was no concept of giving targets to the judges in the district judiciary before 2001. Whatever they would do, they were having a liberty, whether they would dispose of cases or would not. But it was for the first time that on institutional level, the reforms were introduced by way of which the judges were given targets. They would have to achieve those targets each month, like by way of disposal of cases. I remember in those days I happened to be a judge, and we were having pendency of cases as old as 1974. Now,
and they were still pending?
They were pending. Yeah. And it was because of the blessings of the judicial reforms that priority was given to the oldest cases, then certain other areas like vulnerable areas like women cases, divorce cases, rent cases. So all the sensitive areas were prioritized, and then this was the beginning. Then again under the AJP, Access to Justice program, funds were allocated to all the 4 high courts. New courts premises and buildings were made almost throughout the country. New buildings for all the courts at district level have been constructed, which are, I can say, now commensurate to the stature and in fact the dignity and grace of the judges who preside over these courts. Apart from that, we saw under the Access to Justice program the capacity building of the judicial officers. The judges were trained and they were sent abroad. The Judicial Academy at Islamabad was given an impetus. More exercises and more courses were introduced. Likewise, the provincial judicial academies were established across the country, and great emphasis was laid on training the judges, and emphasis was laid on their capacity building. Apart from that, other stakeholders like prison department, the lawyers, the bar rooms, the bar councils, the police department, the prosecution, capacity building of all these stakeholders was also one of the essential component of the access to justice program. And the courts, they also poured upon as to how can we make undertake measures to reduce delay in the disposal of cases. Core areas were identified, causes were, in fact, various papers were written, seminars were held, and the gatherings took place across the country. I myself participated in many of them. So before 2001, we had no concept of reforms. And we have seen manifold increase in our population.
Oh, yes.
At the same time, we have failed to cope up with the pace of addressing the grievances of this judicial delivery system, justice delivery system. Like, for instance, I would give I quote an example of United States of America. There are 101 judges for each 1 million people. In Australia, there are 40 judges for 1 million people. In India, the ratio is 80. In Pakistan,
80 despite having that kind of population.
Yes, and
1.2 billion people.
Yes, and we in Pakistan we are having 7 judges for per average for 1 million people.
Oh, that tells the tale. That tells the story.
Apart from that, we have in our system certain legal issues, which has also been essentially a cause of delay. In judicial cases disposal. Like, for instance, one of the causes is how to ensure that the lawyers dispose of their duties in a timely manner. Now, we see every day there are strikes. We see every day there are holidays, unscheduled strikes, then meetings, then like when one's trial starts, after 6 adjournments are held, and if each adjournment is examined why the adjournment was caused, in 7 out of 7 adjournments, 3 would be because of strikes. 1 would be because the judge is on leave. The 1 would be because the counsel made an excuse from appearance.
So, for various reasons.
Yeah. For various reasons, and we don't have, in fact, any mechanism to ensure that the trial progresses.
That's a very important point, yeah. I'll just come back to you, sir. Moving on to you, sir. First of all, thank you very much, Faisal, for being a part of the show. But let me put a question to you. Normally, because whether you talk about a case regarding the rent, or somebody has occupied your house and is not vacating, or somebody takes a stay, a nonsense stay, I would say. But this lingers on for decades, as earlier mentioned by Khan Saab. Now, the point is that, whenever we talk to the advocates or the lawyers, they always say, well, we've taken a date. We've extended. If this is August, let's delay it. I've taken the date in October or maybe November just to delay. And if you're not, this is a regular practice. And now, when you talk about the capacity to deliver as far as the judges are concerned, very rightly pointed out, like 7 for 1 million people, sir, doesn't make sense at all. If we are going through war on terror now, there is another battalion being erected in PMS because we need more army, more officers and more jawans. Similarly, when we had this similar issue as far as the government schools are concerned, so we heard about the evening shift. Do you think an evening shift in this particular regard can be of some help, sir? If you increase the number of lawyers, increase the number of judges, and from let's say 8 to 2, and then from 3 onwards, let's say till 7 o'clock, you can have another shift. Do you think that is also going to serve the purpose? I'd like to throw light on that.
Well, certainly, I think that is one of the suggestions that has been made from time to time, and I think it's a very valid suggestion to be made. But you've really hit the nail on the head. The real issue in the subcontinent, not just Pakistan, I'm talking about the entire subcontinent, from what we hear. The real issue is that the lawyers here are obsessed with the idea of getting a stay order. My seniors, when I started practicing, the first thing they told me was, you have to get a stay order and then you have to delay the matter. That is how you become a great lawyer
Just delay
in
it.
Pakistan. So your
That's how you make
ability,
money also,
your
because
ability,
you get money on every appearance.
exactly. So your
And
ability,
you also take money in cash.
exactly. And so
This is my own personal experience. Sorry for that, but anyway.
right, and so the ability to get a stay order at the admission hearing, and then to delay the matter indefinitely, is the criteria by which a lawyer is judged. He's not judged by his oratory. He's not judged by his ability to expound the law. Ultimately, he's judged on this ground alone. And that is why in Pakistan you see a lot of adjournments. And adjournments for absolutely facetious, frivolous reasons. And then if there are no adjournments, for example, if you filed a case, and I'm talking about civil courts now especially, you filed a case and you know, this is a suit that you filed for whatever reason, and there's a reply that has to be filed. Now the other party will probably come up with some frivolous application using some rule or order, you know, of the CPC, and misuse it and then delay the matters as long as possible. And these would be absolutely frivolous applications. We're talking about you know, ridiculous and completely nonsense applications that are filed, and that is why ultimately what happens is that you have delays, inordinate delays. We're talking about, I'm surprised it's not just 1974. I know of cases in the Lahore High Court that have been pending since 1960.
So when we say justice delayed is justice denied. So that means justice is denied to almost all.
Justice is denied. You know, I started practicing in 2006, and for the longest time, and I'm talking about at least 5 or 6 years, I was not part of a single case which was disposed of. As in, you know, so I joined at some stage in the proceeding, and it was still going on after, you know, sort of I switched firms, for example.
Normally, for example, when there is a case which is in the session court, and let's suppose Mr. X wins against Mr. Y. Now Mr. Y takes it to the higher level, takes it to the high court.
Exactly.
And even if he loses in the higher court, then the Supreme Court.
Right.
So that takes ages. Obviously, as earlier mentioned, I mean, it's not the will, it's the capacity that is the problem.
Absolutely. And you see, those are obviously genuine, legitimate courses of action going through the appeals process, but the appeals process itself has become such a hassle for the litigant. We are talking about you know, pendency in the Supreme Court for the longest time, and nothing's been done about it. And then you've got Supreme Court in the middle of all these issues that it is right now with the Panama leaks and all of these cases. Somehow these cases get decided very quickly, but the common man's matter is never adjudicated. And I've seen on a number of occasions, especially during the Panama case as it was going on, I would see litigants flying in from Karachi, really poor people who've bought a ticket coming in all the way from Karachi to the Supreme Court for some matter, and that matter doesn't get heard because there's a you know, a politically important case.
So I'll just give you an example. I mean, as far as FATA reforms is concerned, one of the proposals is whether to, okay, let's suppose if they do that, whether to consult the Peshawar High Court or Islamabad High Court. And it's not a joke to come to Islamabad and also into the red zone.
Exactly.
And you're talking about the people from FATA. So that is also creating a problem rather than serving the purpose.
Exactly. And that's all for whatever, you know, whatever geopolitical reason that they believe FATA should be part of the Islamabad Capital Territory, or at least the Islamabad High Court under the jurisdiction of High Court. That doesn't make any sense. You get the closest High Court that there is to FATA, and then you refer them to that
Peshawar for that matter, yeah?
Yes, and Peshawar is the closest High Court. So I was very surprised to read that they're actually considering that. I'm not surprised, but I thought
they haven't done it, but this is one of the proposals actually.
And it is,
and doesn't make sense to me at all.
And I'll tell you, this proposal is going to get accepted. And this is what's going to happen. And this is the unfortunate...
That is going to be very unfortunate. So quick comment and then I'll move on to Shweb. So please.
It is, you know, there is a reason behind it. Since the FATA falls within the administrative domain of the Ministry of Saffron, States and Frontier Regions, and which is in fact exclusively based at Islamabad. Now the law is that the jurisdiction of the High Court under Article 199, or for that matter appeal jurisdiction, the dominant object would be whether the controlling ministry is in Islamabad or in Peshawar. And I don't think that it will create any hassle or problem for the Fatah people.
Distance wise?
No, not the distance wise, because you know already there were certain laws in the past, like extraordinary jurisdiction of the High Courts and of the Supreme Court of Pakistan. But you know, the basic thing behind determining the Islamabad High Court to be the forum of adjudication is, since the ministry controlling, because all the affairs, all the issues arises out from FATA, and that comes to the court. You can only institute a writ petition against a government entity or against a person who is in some way related with the service of the Federation of Pakistan.
Okay, so that is the reason why it is
and that makes sense. This is perfectly valid legal reason for it, but we are talking about why FATA should be part of, or should be under Saffron or the Frontiers and States Ministries ministry. Why shouldn't it become part of
KP.
Of the provincial government? Yes,
exactly. And so that's what
I'll just come back to you. Shweb sir, now a couple of interesting you know, perceptions, let's call them perceptions. I mean, in certain matters they're pretty true, in certain maybe they're just mere perceptions. That, you know, the nexus between the lawyers and the judges. A lawyer becomes a judge, and then, you know, obviously influential people make sure that, you know, our case should be referred to, because if I'm known to you and you're a judge, and I'll say, you know, let's make sure, you know, for some, if I can have that kind of an influence, I'll refer my case to you because you're related to me, or you are known to me. Or in some cases, because somebody knows that with due apology, sir, there are corrupt people in every department, and there are good people in every department. But regarding, when you talk about customs for that matter, or police for that matter, they are brilliant officers. But they're, I mean, the perception again comes in. And when it comes to this matter, sir, if you're a poor man, if you can't afford a lawyer, and there is a case of a cycle theft or something of that sort, you're in the jail, maybe for a year or so, though even if you were convicted, you might end up having a sentence of 3 months or so, but you're there in jail for a year. But if you're a rich man, you can afford a good lawyer, sir, like Ehsan Saab or Salman Raja Saab, for that matter. There are known names. Even I would take your name in that regard also, Shweb Saab. You're a known lawyer in this part. To afford a lawyer means that half the case you have won, sir. Why is that so? Isn't it unfortunate, sir?
This is unfortunate. I think when you say the Constitution says that the speedy and inexpensive justice should be given, that is the constitutional guarantees, that is the constitutional requirement that a citizen of Pakistan has their right, that the state is bound to give inexpensive and speedy justice to the citizens of Pakistan. So it is not being implemented. Who had to implement? The state. Who had to implement? The parliament, the state agency, or the state institutions, whosoever may be. And the most important, after discussion, I have arrived to the conclusion, the most important issue is to improve the quality and quantity of judges, which is missing nowadays. Because the quality of judges was in the past, there was no quantity. Now there is some kind of addition of the quantity, but the quality has been decreased. So that is the problem. And the other problem is that...
So what is the reason for that, sir?
Many reasons. Because
for example,
all the institutions have been deteriorated, not only our institution, not only the legal fraternity, the institution of bars, the institution of the judiciary, and especially after the movement, all the senior judges in the superior courts were ousted, most of them. And thereafter, the new staff was appointed. And at the time of those appointments, the criteria and selection of the competent judges having their integrity might be that was compromised. And once a judge is appointed, he cannot be ousted except in accordance with the provisions contained in Article 209 of the Constitution.
And what does it say?
The Supreme Judicial Council shall examine the complaints, whether they are involved in misconduct or corruption, and thereafter, after holding an inquiry, they will submit their cases to the President of Pakistan, and the President of Pakistan may terminate their services. So that is very
So
complicated
the President of Pakistan has the
situation.
authority and the power.
Has the authority and the power to terminate, but on the recommendations of the Supreme Judicial Council and not otherwise.
But sir, when you talk about the Supreme Judicial Council, now there is another point. I mean, so many names are pending. There are so many, everybody has certain concerns. I will not take the name, but this is a very regular feature that for some political reasons, let me put it this way, and because certain judges are for some reason associated with certain political parties, and they're so influential because they have the support. Normally what they say that, when Mr. X became, Mr. So-and-so, the most powerful, let's say the Prime Minister, he inducted so many people, and by the time, after 20 years, those were in certain places, starting from the Deputy Commissioner or the Assistant Commissioner to whatever level, they also grow. It's like a plant. You put a plant and it grows and eventually it gives you fruit. So don't you think the political parties should also be blamed for this, sir?
I don't think that the political parties are now being
I
blamed,
can take
because
now
at this stage,
there are so many people associated with certain political parties.
After 18th Amendment, now the game is in the hands of the judiciary. After 18th Amendment 2010, now there is a Judicial Commission of Pakistan. So Judicial Commission is consisted of the Chief Justice of Pakistan, is the chairman of the commission. Thereafter, 4 senior most judges of the Supreme Court. Then there is a judge of the Chief Justice of the concerned High Court, where the judge of the High Court is being elevated. Then there is senior most judge of the High Court concerned. Then there is Attorney General, then the Advocate General, then 2 persons nominated by the Bar Councils, one Pakistan Bar Council nominee and the other is the Provincial Bar Council nominee. So the lawyers community has very low role, you can say, that can be ignored in nomination or in appointment of the judges. The main role is with the Supreme Court of Pakistan, and somehow very lesser role is of the concerned High Court. So for the purpose of appointing the judges, the political parties at this stage, especially after 2010 and onward, there is no role of the appointment. Previously they had the role in appointing them, but the judge, when a competent judge is appointed, and if he is taken on oath that I will preserve the constitution, I will decide the cases in accordance with law. Thereafter you see the latest example, Mr. Faisal Rehman Lodi had a very, very close nexus with Pakistan Muslim League Noon. What happened? 2 judges have given the verdict in favor of Kulsum Nawaz, whereas Mr. Justice Faisal Rehman Lodi, he had given the different view.
Yes.
He had a very close relation with the Pakistan Muslim League, and so these are the things when the judge.
That is exactly what my question was, that they've got political affiliations.
But when the judge is appointed,
they should be. When you say that
when the judge is appointed,
Mr. X,
he is above all.
He should be neutral. Sir.
He should be neutral.
Now
without any association, without any affiliation.
I'll talk about a case, sir. There was this case in Islamabad where a former judge, sir, like as you have served, there was this little girl, I would say, let's call it child labor or whatever, and this little girl was beaten by the wife of the judge. Yes. And you know the case I'm referring to, sir. And obviously now it starts exactly if you're an influential man, who's going to take this case? Because I'm known to you, and I'm known to Hamdani Sahab, I'm known to Shoaib Sahab. So obviously I know that you'll look after me. And then also the FIR is so important. Those words used, the kind of the FA which we call, so and so is section or whatever. That also determines about the future of the case. In certain cases, I mean, people have been, not convicted, but like they've been sort of got into that, rather sucked into that problem because of these sections, which the SHO or whoever writes the
well,
FIR.
I would humbly disagree with this proposition that sections of law determines the future of the trial. In fact, it is the nature of offense. Even if a section of law has been omitted by the SHO for any extraneous consideration, the charge, when the charge is framed against an accused, then it is not based keeping in view the section of law which the prosecution has chosen. The charge is framed against accused on the basis of the allegation contained in the FIR. So it is immaterial whether any section of, for instance, I would give you an example. You quoted the example of the...
You know, no, Khan Sahab, let me put another question right now. People, you know, when you go to America, you see what's written on the police cars: to serve and to protect. To serve and to protect, so you feel comfortable going to. Over here, you are reluctant to go to a policeman because God knows what's going to happen to you. That is the trust deficit, and there is a reason. There's a history behind that. Somebody was asking me that this green uniform of the Punjab police, starting off from Lahore in particular, will it serve the purpose? I said no, because it is not the uniform which matters, it's the man inside that uniform matters more. It's about the mindset. So if I'm wearing a brown suit or a black suit or a green suit...
Unless the political involvement of the politicians and is not removed.
So your police is totally politicized, whether in Punjab or Sindh or KP.
I would disagree that it is politicized in KP.
No, not in KP. KP is slightly better in KP.
KP, I've seen a police force...
Asif Durrani Sahab did a wonderful job, sir.
And it is continued.
By the next IG?
Yes.
But sir, you're coming back to the basic.
This is the will of the politicians. If they want to... if they want that the police should be an independent, they should be honest or not.
So look what is happening in Sindh for that matter, sir. I mean, the IG is there and IG is not there. I mean, whether who's calling the shots, the Home Minister or the Home Secretary? I mean, God knows what's going on.
If the politician is using any police officer or official for his personal use, they will do, and not only they will do for their own cause, then the police officials and the officers who are serving for their bosses, they will serve for their own. And they will be dishonest not only for, why they will make the dishonesty? Only for their political bosses, not only for their political, for themselves they will do. So that is the main root cause. And thereafter it is continuing.
The whole system needs to be taken care of actually.
So unless there is a will by the political parties, then
you have hit the
you can improve the skill of the police officer.
Now, coming back to the same point, sir. Now, corrupt police practices, do you think that really affects the end judgment, sir?
Well, since I am a trial...
You've been a judge and you're a practicing lawyer also.
Yes, I've been a judge and I am a trial counsel.
What sort of lacunas are there, sir?
Well, in very rare cases, police deliberate lacunas could affect the outcome of the trial.
And they do that?
In fact, you know, the role of police in damaging the investigation or the profile of the case, in my view, is limited. They can do it in the very beginning, like if a murder takes place and they deliberately, for certain extraneous consideration, delays the registration of FIR. Now, the delay itself gives rise to doubts. Now, it starts from the very first act of reporting the matter to the police. Then again, like while preparing a site plan, or for that matter, they fail to show the recovery of the empties which they recovered from the spot. Then there can be some level of the damaging role, but you know, it cannot overall supersede and influence the outcome of the
final judgment.
Yes, because you know, the lawyers, the court and the system that we have, in fact, we can correct things which are omitted, but there are certain exceptions. Like for example, if a murder takes place at 8 p.m. and if the police by culpable dereliction, they delays it up to 12 midnight. Now these 4 hours are very crucial, and this will in fact haunt the prosecution, particularly the complainant throughout the trial, to explain why this delay occurred. Now, you know, police can do, but you know, not in every case. Police is in fact, in my view, it is not as much degenerated institution as we have now assumed for it. In KP, I've seen cases, how they conduct cases and how they do investigation, and why did I differed? In KP, the police is
it's all computerized, that's what we have heard, correct?
It has been computerized, and in KP we have a police system which in my view is compatible with any developed country policing system.
And what exactly did they do? I mean,
like accountability, the police officers like the PSPs or SSPs, DPOs and DIGs, they are more concerned that they are known as outright, upright,
honest officers.
Honest officer. They are jealously guarding their reputation in KP. This is what we happen to see amongst the judges. Judges would jealously guard their reputation. Now we see this practice developing amongst the police officer, number one. Number two, you would not, like the people have a very expeditious remedy. Any wrong that is done by a police officer is reported to the IG within seconds.
His number is displayed.
His number is displayed and he takes action. Third, if the prosecution culminates into acquittal, now that they have arranged a mechanism where the IO, investigation officer, has to explain his position, why a person charged for terrorism or for that matter for narcotics cases have got acquitted from the court. And that investigation, we have seen many cases where IOs have been punished for their poor performances. Now, in fact, the yardstick to measure the good or bad investigation by police is to see how many of their cases have culminated into conviction.
The history.
Yes, and this is what they keep a track record. They have appointed focal persons. They have entrusted specific duties to the police officer that you would keep on supervising the case until its conclusion. Now, not only this, not only in investigation fair, or for that matter in the trial fair, we also see fairness. I think the PTI or Imran Khan can very rightly take credit for having liberated KP police from the clutches of the...
Sir, as they always say, where there's a will, there's a way. Now, sir, another important point. If you remember, Shoaib Sadal, the former IG, once I had a chance to have a long discussion with him regarding the police reforms. And you know, the typical old school of thought used to prevail at that time. That big mustache and the stick formula by a typical, I won't use the word SHO, the Thanedar kind of concept. And you know, even if you haven't done anything, he's going to make sure that you accept it. You know, you accept it, and you eventually, once you appear before the honorable judge, you say, well, you know, that was under the pressure or whatever. So police reforms versus the judicial reforms. That formula of controlling the natives, unfortunately, still prevails.
Absolutely.
You understand what I'm saying, sir?
Yes, absolutely.
That is where the problem, and secondly, very rightly pointed out, I mean, by Khan Saab, that, you know, if there is a will, you know, then you can do it. And the credit goes to the government. I mean, if they've done a good job, recognized by the people, I mean, good enough. It is for the people, actually. This is what democracy is. Democracy isn't about what we are seeing in the moment. But having said that, sir, police reforms, how important are they in order to correct or have proper, appropriate judicial reforms? And secondly, also tell us, sir, do you think this is, there could be a mechanism to have a regulatory body on top to monitor what's going on, sir? For example, if X case was submitted in the court for hearing on a certain date, and it should be taken care of in a year's time, and if it is there for the last 7-8 years, somebody needs to, you know, sort of...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to have their heads rolled.
Absolutely.
For that. Look, as far as the police reforms are concerned, and I think again, what you said was right on the money. The problem with our whole policing system is the mindset. We are still operating in a colonial mindset where police was used to control the natives. That was the reason for it.
Unfortunately, still is.
And that is what essentially our police force has done. And given sort of the, and this is very interesting, one thing I've noticed in my, few travels to the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province is the difference in mindset there of the police in terms of, how they approach things. And I think that has to do something also with sort of the, the fact that they are less of an agrarian society like Punjab, where there's a lot of patronage and a lot of sort of, you know, feudal and sort of a structure which patronizes the police and looks at it as a particular body for certain, you know, certain use in a political instrument, as a political instrument. So that is not there in KP. But in terms of using the police or coming up with a formula for the police where police force actually becomes public servant instead of, you know, being the Maibap or the Sarkar of that particular.
That's what we witness almost on a daily basis. Forget about the urban areas. Let's talk about the rural areas. Look,
exactly.
what happens there, you know.
And that's where the entire culture of patronage and, you know, the way the police is used for political purposes comes in. And you know, it's remarkable that KP has done so well in this regard. Coming to sort of how to apply modern police techniques, I think that would be very, very important for prosecution of cases anywhere in Pakistan, you know, in terms of, you know, the collection of evidence, the blood splatter work, all of that, the kind of things that you hear about that happen in the West, for example, and don't happen here. All of those things need to be, the police officers need to be trained. There have to be proper CSI units, you know, dedicated departments within the police which do blood work and DNA work and all of that. And I'm sure there are provisions for it, but that is absolutely essential for there to be prosecution, capable, efficient prosecution of crimes in the country. So I see both the police reforms and the judicial reforms as interlinked.
They're interlinked, yes.
They're interlinked,
indeed.
Essentially because what you have to have is a police that is working for the people, for their protection, for the elimination of crime.
It's a service-oriented
It's a police. It's a
institution.
service, right? And this is what is remarkable, and this is even during the British times. If you read some of the people who visited the UK when we were under the British Raj, one of the things that they would note is the difference of attitude in policemen actually in Great Britain, and the difference of policemen and even English policemen, British policemen who were you know, police officers here in the subcontinent. And I think we need to now adopt those fundamental the fundamental attitude with which we approach the citizenry at large, and that is what is needed for the police force to actually become an effective servant of the people.
Primarily the police reforms and the judicial, they are interlinked.
They're
like this.
Yes.
So unless until you do amendments in the police reforms and to make sure that the desired objective is achieved, there's no point doing the judicial reforms.
Right, and I mean they're interlinked. Also, you know, we're talking about the prosecution department. That needs, KP has a very good prosecution law.
Because, you know, whatever is presented before the honorable judge, he's going to make a judgment on that, right?
Absolutely.
So if there is some tampering at the basic level, that is where the problem is.
Justice system comprise of three components.
And what are those, sir?
Police, prosecution and judiciary.
Simple as that.
So
Absolutely.
these
So
two
police
are essential components of the justice system.
Correct.
So you
Now
have
when
to have
we talk of judicial reforms, it means the reforms introduced in police, in prosecution and judiciary itself.
right. And prosecution, let's not forget that is also a very key part of the puzzle. It's piece of the puzzle that needs to fit in.
But normally, last quick comment from you, Shoaib Sahab, normally, you know, what we see is that when I watch the American movies, let's put it this way, so if a crime takes place, the police comes in and they cordon off the area, and then, you know, they will not let anybody go close to that particular
Crime
area
scene,
where there's the crime scene, because, you know, any evidence, you know,
could be tampered.
Absolutely could be tampered. For example, a cigarette butt, or the fingerprints on a glass, for that matter, or the scene, you know. So they'll take the photographs, and then the forensics department comes in, and, you know, and then we see, wow, over here, sir, yes, there is a forensic department. I'm not sure how capable they are, how well trained they are, whether they've been sent abroad for the, you know, for the right, I would say, exercise and all.
Yeah.
Now, when you do comparison, I was earlier told by Khan Saab that there are 70 judges for 1 million people, even in India, a country like which is a third world country, sir, where there is a lot of problems, more problems than Pakistan. Why 7 judges for 1 million in Pakistan, sir? We have got a good number of people, sir. We have very capable people like you guys.
As I have already asked that there is a need to improve the quality and quantity of judges. That is the most important one thing. And the other is, you see, when the police officials really want to have investigation, they have done it. When there is an attack on Musharraf, all the persons were picked up and the conviction.
A lot of people from the Air Force were involved in that case.
But at the time when there is a death of
Benazir
Bhutto, what was done?
Look at the judgment, sir. I'm sorry to say.
Yes.
We can all disagree with that.
And washing
what
away
happened.
of the
Everything was
Immediately,
washed.
sir.
So these are the problems.
I'm a witness. I was there.
So these are the problems. At the night or on the same day, it was being seen on the TV that area is being washed.
The Bowsers came and they just...
So
what
see,
evidence? They said we wanted to clear that, we don't want any mess. And
so
what happened after that, we all know.
So the political murders, right from the Liaquat Ali Khan up till now, nothing has been done. So
the man who shot Liaquat Ali Khan was sitting in the first row.
He was
the moment he took the pistol out,
he was killed at the same
time. He was
time.
killed at the spot.
So
look what happened in the case of Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln, and later in the case of Kennedy.
So these are the problems in our country. If we are, the police officials, some are very competent, very capable, they can perform, but there should be a will by the state authorities. And the one most important proposal from you, that the regulator, there should be some joint regulator.
Do we have any system?
Joint regulator consisting of the judges, consisting of the lawyers, and consisting of the police officers or officials. And they should sit together, and they should and the political authorities.
Normally what we have when you are in power, you never talk about that. The moment either you're in opposition or you have suffered in one way or the other, you know exactly what I'm talking about, sir. Then you talk about judicial reforms. Quick comment from all three of you, sir. Starting from you, Shoaib sir.
I think now this is the high time to sit together and we should think about the state, about our country. And that is the time that the political authorities, our political bosses, now at this time especially, whosoever is in opposition, ask whosoever is in the government, because the government is also saying like in a manner that we are being victimized. I don't know how they are being victimized, but they should sit together. They should have a consensus how to improve the judicial system.
Improve, not to benefit from that. Hamdani sir?
Right. In terms of other things that have been spoken about, you know, enough has been said. But as a lawyer, I would say that it is my responsibility as an officer of the court to not abuse the process, to not take undue adjournments, to not file frivolous applications. I think that is where we can contribute as lawyers to the system and its working.
Sir?
We have more than 3 million cases in the district courts across the country.
3 million.
And out of 3 million, we have around 1.3 million alone in Punjab. Then the second highest pendency is from Sindh, followed by KP and then
Balochistan.
Balochistan, where the entire pendency is about 4,000 cases, whereas in Islamabad alone, we have 31,000 pendency in the district courts alone. So why this pendency has mushroomed to such a appalling level? Well, you know, apart from other factors that we discussed, we did not discuss the laxity on the part of the presiding officers in disposing of cases. Whereas most of the judges are very generous in granting adjournments. Then, you know, you talked about of the regulators. The laws have provided like a Justice Liaison Committee, which Justice Liaison Committee, which is chaired by the district institution judge in each district, and is participated by the district police officer and the prosecution in charge and the prison representative. So we have the system, we have the mechanism. What we need is in fact to sensitize all the stakeholders that the increase in the litigation and increase in the pendency, like, you know, we do not have that much level of disposal. If the disposal is 1,000 cases in a district, the institution is 1,800. So each month we have a backlog.
There is an addition. It's just piling up and up and up.
Piling up.
Yeah. Anyway, sir, Khan Sahab, I was just told that we're totally running out of time. But anyway, thank you very much. I think we need to do more shows on such topics because this is something important. This is for the people, actually. Once again, sir, thank you very much. Hamdani sir, it was a pleasure. Shab, so thank you so much. And that's all we have for this hour. Inshallah, I'll see you again. Till then, you take good care of yourself. Have a great weekend. Khuda Hafiz.